Hello, friends. Today I want us to pull back the curtain on a very dangerous lie. A lie that has been dressed up in policy, protected by silence, and sold to the world as a fact. I'm talking about the term farmer header conflict, mostly being used in Nigeria over some couple of years now. A phrase that has done more to conceal genocide in Nigeria than to solve any real problem. This isn't just about cattle, it's not just about land. It's about lives. It's about power. It's about the slow and quiet erasure of Christian and indigenous farming communities in Nigeria's Middle Belt. And it's time the world sees it for what it really is. Let me unpack this. Number one, how the narrative was coined. The phrase farmer header conflict began to dominate headlines just, uh, just after President Buhari became Nigerian's leader in 2015. Yeah, I recall now. Suddenly, when communities in states like Benue, Plateau, Southern Kaduna, Taraba were attacked, the media didn't say massacre or terrorist attacks. They said clashes. They called it communal violence. But these weren't clashes. These were targeted attacks, mostly at night, heavily armed gunmen storming villages, killing men, women, and children, most of them Christians and tribesmen. They burned down homes and farms. And yet, the Nigerian government refused to call it terrorism. Instead, they painted it as a conflict between farmers and herders, as though it was a fair fight. Friends, but tell me, when a man comes with an AK-47 rifle and the farmer only has a hoe or cutlass or boat, is that a clash? Number two, let me speak on how the West bought into this narrative. Rather than question the deeper ethnic and religious tension, involved in this, the Western governments and NGOs picked the easier story and they gave it a baptism called climate change. They said the herders were migrating south because of desertification. They said it was a struggle over resources. And suddenly, genocide was being rebranded as an environmental issue. Yes, I agree that climate change does exist. But what about the refusal of herders to embrace ranching? The global best practice for animal husbandry. It happens in places like the United States of America, Australia, Kenya, and even Rwanda, where pastoralists are required to ranch their livestock to reduce conflict. But in Nigeria, whenever ranching is proposed, some Fulani leaders claim it goes against their culture. And nomadism is a way of life. Let me ask you questions. Very simple question. Since when did culture justify violence? Since when did the cultural lifestyle give you the right to trample on someone else's farm, destroy their food, and take over their ancestral land? The third point I want to raise today is the resistance to ranching. If I may ask, is it a culture or a cover up? In Benue State, the former governor introduced the anti-grazing open grazing law. What followed? Coordinated attacks. Churches were burnt, villages were ransacked, children slaughtered, the elderly killed, young people wasted. That wasn't resistance, that was punishment. It shows that the refusal to embrace ranching isn't just about culture, it's about control, a strategic move to dominate and displace indigenous communities, to expand Fulani settlements under the guise of herding. Meanwhile, global observers then looked away. Not all, but most global observers looked away. They were too busy pushing their climate report to notice the blood in the land. Fourthly, I want to emphasize about the Middle Belt, which is the epicenter of injustice in Nigeria and in Africa. Let's talk about Nigerian farmer, especially in this part of the country. These are people who feed the nation. Yet today, many of them are in IDP camps, homeless, hungry, and forgotten. Entire villages like Guma, Agatu, Miyango, and Kaura in Kaduna State, and to mention the recent ones in Boy, in in Mangu, and in Bokos local government councils in Plateau State. They have been turned into graveyards. Farmers have lost their lands, their harvest, and most worrisome, their families. And what does the Nigerian government do? Nothing. Instead, Buhari's administration approved billions for herders. Yes, I mean billions. The so called Ruga program, the livestock transformation plan of 2021, reports confirm that the government released a whooping sum of 2.6 billion to herder communities under the guise of what? Development. Yet farmers, Nigerian farmers, aboriginal farmers, the landowners, the ones who were attacked, the ones who lost everything, were given what? Zero. Let that sink into your mind, listeners. The victims were ignored while the aggressors were empowered. I want to raise this, it's a fifth point here about the fact that destroying livelihood is also genocide. Genocide isn't just about gas chambers or bombs. Sometimes it's slow, systemic. Sometimes it looks like destroying a people's ability to survive. It involves burning their farms, chasing them off their ancestral land, making them independent and I mean, this is sorry. I'm sorry to say this. I'm becoming a little bit very emotional. Making them dependent. I meant to say, breaking their spirit. That's exactly what has been happening to Nigerian farmers from the Middle Belt and some part of the South. And the worst part is this: that the international community remained silent and still does to some large extent because the government has crafted a palatable narrative that shifts blame to climate, culture, and cows. I call it the CCC. And the sixth issue I'm trying to raise here is about the Buhari paradox, which is cattle over Nigerian citizens. Now let's be honest with ourselves that under Buhari's regime, what issue got the most airtime, if I may ask you? Cattle rustling. His government issued statements after statements condemning the theft of cows. Well, when whole communities, when whole villages were wiped out, barely a whisper. Isn't it suspicious that while villagers cried for help, the presidency was more concerned about missing cows? And truth be told, many cases of rustlings were internal. Fulani groups raiding each other, a criminal racket dressed up as injustice. But even then, more energy was spent protecting the reputation of the herders than saving the lives of our farmers. My seventh point is that there's a need for a call for international action. This is why we are calling the United Nations. the International Criminal Court of Justice, global human rights groups and watchdogs that they should please investigate these killings, demand accountability, stop treating this as a local conflict. This is ethnic cleansing. This is religious persecution. This is genocide. The Nigerian state has failed in its duty to protect its citizens and is now complicit in hiding the truth. If the world can act for Gaza, for Ukraine, for Sudan, then the middle belt of Nigeria deserves the same outcry. And to mention states in the northwest like Zamfara and Katsina, where their local farmers are also being killed, and in most times their leaders have kept silence. Only God knows why. The eighth point I want to emphasize on today is the need to support the farmers. And this comes with the whole of us speaking the truth. We need to support farmers by speaking out for them. As I close today's episode, friends, let me remind you the fight for truth is not just about exposing lies, it's about standing with those whose voices have been silenced. Please support our farmers, demand interventions, demand compensations, demand justice, and don't just let anyone convince you that this is just a farmer header issue. That narrative is a weapon and it's being used to bury the dead without questions. Speak up, friends. Stand up and never be afraid to call a spade a spade. This has been me, Iyah, on the Iyah Iyah Perspectives. And I will always speak what many are too afraid to say. Until next time, please stay loud, stay bold, and stay human. And if you like this message or it resonates with you, please like it, subscribe to this channel, and share this message with your friends. Until next time, I say bye for now. Bye.